Well, happy Markcast Wednesday here. Back. Weird week this week. American Thanksgiving coming in tomorrow. Lots of things going on. Maybe not have a Friday show coming up this week. Let me introduce the co-host today. We'll kind of set the stage here. Evan back on the West Coast. Flight made it. Jason back home. Easier trip when it's when the Grey Cup's in Hamilton. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Reid. It was great to see you guys on the weekend, and what a time we had.
Evan, I've safely made it to San Diego. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it was good to get out to the Hammer finally and see all that. I don't have my mic today, obviously, since I'm on the road, but we'll make it work. But yeah, man, it was a time. I think we can all agree it was that was something that we won't be forgetting for a long time.
Yeah, so to set the stage, we'll get into everything today. Exciting stuff coming off the kind of CFL 2023 season in review. I didn't want to, we'll talk a lot Grey Cup, we'll talk a lot Grey Cup Festival, but maybe a little bit more timely than just, a 3-day late old recap of the game. But we'll talk about all that. We have a lot of new, viewers, subscribers. We even added new members. I kind of started like a supporter. I think YouTube was like incentivizing people to start a supporter thing, but 65,000 or 66,000 views and counting now for our CFL Grey Cup live show. I tweeted about this, tremendously humbled, more than quadrupled what we had last year, which was a tripling of the year before. I think we had done about 3,500 that first year. Paul and I's show was rough, as Jason knows from kind of watching that in Hamilton. And then I had about 16,000 last year, and to have 65,000, is a credit to Evan and Jason, obviously coming on every week and doing that. All of our guests, some timely, good SEO, I think, with YouTube and Google and the algorithm. But thanks everyone that watched that. I think that, as I tweeted out, speaks to kind of the testament of non-traditional media and the importance of that moving forward. And I've had conversations with the CFL, who still doesn't follow, I believe, any of us back on Twitter. Hey, content creation and relationships, and they've said they're always working on that. But maybe in the postseason we can get to that. But we'll put a bow on this today. Like I said, CFL, get through all of that. We'll be doing, I presume, the CFL Media Day stuff in the winter. So we'll get all that set up. We had Commissioner Ambrosi on and many of the head coaches and GMs. So we'll do all that. But I kind of round the bow out today. Jason, a long time coming here, back to back, with the interim to Hamilton. Did the Grey Cup live up to you and the festival and what you guys were expecting?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It really was night and day compared to 2021, when it was really a scaled back version of the event. They had so many things going on around the city that there really was something for everybody to enjoy, whether you're a football fan or not. They had the Santa Claus parade. They had a lot of live music. So I thought it was fantastic seeing the city full of people, full of colors, and it was really a fantastic event.
It is so funny, as I'm tweeting about this, congrats to Anthony Miller here, just posting our group chat. CFL follows him back on Twitter. So at least that he just added that. So that is that. Evan, I know you've been looking forward to a lot, here coming up, a lot of excitement for all this. Did this live up to everything you expected?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't there. This was my first Grey Cup, so I wasn't there, for the one in Regina, obviously, and then I wasn't there for the one, previously in Hamilton. But from everybody else, that I've heard in terms of their opinion, they said that this was probably, the best presented one. This was really, the city of Hamilton, putting the work in here, because I think the one in 2021, with all the COVID regulations, the CFL just kind of took over and made that their thing. But this felt a lot more, I don't know, just felt a lot more complete. Everybody was having a good time. Really couldn't find anything, that was wrong with it. Maybe besides you having to pay $50 to get into the team party headquarters because your credential expired after 8 p.m. But little things like that. I don't know. I can't be too nitpicky, right?
Yeah, we'll run through all that. I will get to the game, and then I want to talk through shenanigans, what we got into here. So, Jason, this is an instant classic, right? All the tweets, kind of all of that stuff coming down to the wire. I sent, Cody follows me on Twitter. I sent him a DM last night. I said, hey, man, I don't even know if you check any of this stuff, but just how proud I was of him, and just, him and Jason and kind of everything they've gone through over the last year. I know the legacy of Winnipeg, and believe me, I talked with a lot of the Winnipeg reporters in the reporter suite about, 3 is going to cement, and they've got Mike O'Shea wearing the old Winnipeg Blue Bomber hat. So when they put the statue up, at IG Field, it'll all kind of, I mean, there was a lot of presumptions that way, and that's understood. And, I had even seen friend of the show, Derek Taylor, kind of doing his radio hits in the hotel lobby before going to the game. So, kind of unexpected in that way. But to me, the storyline of Cody kind of getting the redemption on that, just really after having a tremendous, horrendous last year, was kind of worth all that. Jason, what did you make of the game itself?
Well, it's just that. I think it's Cody Fajardo that is the story of this game, because I said on our show that if this game turned into like a back and forth shootout type of game, I didn't think the Alouettes could win. But that's exactly what we got. We got a game that had lots of lead changes. And Cody Fajardo really was, for the first time this season, the reason that the Alouettes won that game on Sunday. And he really did play like a Grey Cup champion quarterback that day.
Yeah, Evan, did you expect that? Because I know when we saw, it was funny. We had heard the rumors that I think Jamie Nye, who was on our live show, had come out and said, Cody had a really fiery speech that really kind of worked up the locker room. And I think the CFL account had tried to tweet, because it was secondhand. Jamie had heard it. And so then they finally released the video. Cody, F you, just watch and all that. But what I liked about it was Cody saying, I want the ball, in my hands at the biggest moments. We saw him with the post game with the Rosh as well, which I have a comment about that in a minute. But, to come down to Cody, to have him kind of, that's what every star athlete wants, is the chance to win the game in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said on the pregame show that the unit that I was most worried about on either side of the ball was Montreal's offense, just given, everything that we had seen previously. And then they turned out to be the best unit of that game, I think, at least. I mean, Montreal's defense continued to play well, kept them alive. But, I mean, Cody Fajardo, his season essentially came down to two throws. There was the third down conversion, 3rd and 5 to Cole Speaker, and then there was the touchdown right after that to Tyson Philpott with, 12, 11 seconds left, whatever. You could not have executed those two throws perfectly. And it's difficult for any quarterback in a crunch situation like that to get the job done. Cody, it almost looked like he was doing that, every day. I mean, if you watch the Grey Cup and you didn't watch the CFL on a regular basis, I mean, you probably think Cody Fajardo was, a top passer in the league. And, maybe you throw him into that conversation after what he was able to do in the Grey Cup. But, that's what I expected Caleros to be doing, making those tight throws and tight windows in crunch time. But Fajardo went out there, and, their season came down to a couple plays really there at the end. And, again, yeah, he just executed them perfectly. So, yeah, really happy for Cody. Again, continuing to prove all the doubters wrong. I think that's been, really the storyline about this game. Owls were very fired up, not just Cody, obviously, but the rest of the team. Go watch Marc-Antoine Dequoi's speech, in French, talking about, keep your English, and we're bringing the cup back to Quebec. I mean, guys were fired up. So it was really cool to see that, always a good underdog story. But to be honest, I don't think, Alouettes thought that they were the underdogs in that game. I think, Sankey, Lemon, Fajardo, all those guys, they knew going into that game, that they were going to win. And I think, I don't know who said it. Somebody on Twitter, somebody with the Owls was like, once they heard Cody's speech, they knew they were going to win the game. People were crying, and this whole thing. And it's just, it's great, man. It's great to see that. It was a phenomenal game all around. And yeah, that Owls offense was really a nice surprise, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it was funny. Last year I ran into Arash because he was standing. I don't know. He was doing hits with Dunk, and I saw Arash working a lot. But it was funny because he had the post game that he had tweeted, here's my one-on-one with Cody. And, he said, oh, Cody, I didn't think you had it in you, and you proved me right. And, it's one they say there. And then he's on Rob Peterson's show yesterday, wow, Winnipeg totally blew it. Jason, what do you make of that? The Winnipeg, because I've heard both, and I also want to get more into the Alouettes kind of underdog of it. But did Montreal win the game, or did Winnipeg blow the game?
I think you got to give all credit to Montreal. I think that they played way better than any of us really expected going into this game offensively, like Evan said. And I think that this game really came down to who had the ball last, and that just happened to be Montreal, who scored with 13 seconds left on the clock. If there was a minute left in the game when Montreal scored that touchdown, could have been a completely different result. But at the end of the day, the Alouettes really seized the opportunity, and they deserve all the credit for it.
Yeah, I also, and like I said, I've seen a lot of, Montreal, you were an 11-win team, and you weren't really that big of an underdog. I would vehemently disagree. Like I said, with Cody's speech, and you can change your perception during the season, but going in, they very much were the underdogs. Obviously, making the moves kind of and not kind of resting on the laurels. It's interesting because we having conversations right now, watching like the Kansas City Chiefs and stuff in the NFL, and like, well, maybe they should have acquired a wide receiver here before the trade deadline, or what's going on here, the things they need to shore up. Where Montreal here in the CFL took care of maybe the holes they needed to. Right, they had kind of that chaos going into kind of the free agency with the new ownership and all of that. Evan, what do you make of that? Kind of the underdogness of Montreal, and maybe kind of people trying to take away that win now.
Yeah, well, I think, while they were an 11-win team, I mean, I can't get over the fact, that they didn't beat Toronto, BC, or Winnipeg in the regular season, and then they beat two of those three teams, in the playoffs. You had to, take down – I mean, the Hamilton game ended up being a bit easier than we thought. I thought Hamilton was going to win, but, really Montreal didn't have any problems there. That kind of set the tone, for what was to come. But, like, they had to go into Toronto. You had to take down a team who was tied for the best regular season record in CFL history. And then you have to go into the Hammer and play Winnipeg, who's, again, like, well, now we're going to get into this debate about whether or not they're a dynasty, right? And I don't know if I want to touch on that yet. But just for the purpose of this argument, the team that was, I guess, a dynasty, with 4 straight Grey Cups going back to 2019, you have to go in there and find a way to beat them. But going back to what Jason said, I definitely agree that this was more of a Montreal win than a Winnipeg loss. I think that the way Montreal played in that game, they probably would have beaten, any team in the league. Quite frankly, I just, again, that was a complete – they had their miscues, the James Letcher fumble, Cody threw his pick. So it wasn't all perfect. But even with that, I mean, they were down 10 at half. They were down multiple possessions multiple times in the game, and were still able to get back in it, in the final couple seconds there. So, yeah, I definitely think this was more of a Montreal win. And, we'll get into this, as the show goes on. But a lot of questions about Winnipeg. I think there's some things with the Bombers that we might have overlooked just because we got used to their greatness. And now that they've lost, we're sitting here thinking, well, GM's not under contract. I brought it up on the pregame show. You've got a lot of guys that are aging. So there's, I think, a lot of uncertainty there in Winnipeg, and maybe more than some people would like to admit.
Yeah, Jason, I'll throw to you on that. Winnipeg's dynasty here. I mean, like I said, they were getting ready. I won't name who, but some of the Winnipeg reports, they were ready to erect a statue of Mike O'Shea like today, in terms of his legacy and Zach Collaros and all that. What do you make of Winnipeg here and the legacy now? Because like I said, I know that you've touched on this a lot during the season of kind of different historical franchises.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the question of whether or not they're a dynasty is definitely up in the air now at this point because, depending on what your definition, a lot of people say 3 championships within a 4-year span. And now, obviously, they're not going to be able to accomplish that. If they get to a 5th straight next year, I'm not going to count them out from doing that. But like Evan said, they have a ton of aging players. And let's just call it back the fact. Zach Collaros has not been that good in the playoffs the last 3 years, statistically speaking, that is. And I didn't think he was especially good in this Grey Cup game, and was definitely, if he had played at the same level of Cody Fajardo in this one, I definitely think that Winnipeg would have won. I think Brady Oliveira really was Winnipeg's MOP in this one, or MVP in this one, whatever you want to call it. So I think at the end of the day, they have a lot of questions going into next season, but I'm not gonna count them out.
Yeah, it seems like one of those revisionist things now. I can't remember who it was that put out the tweet, the stats of that. And regular season Zach versus playoff Zach is kind of night and day different. And like, feeling like maybe they blew it last year, right, with Toronto, and now you have the opportunity to come back. Evan, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, one of the things that was overlooked that, was just brought up is, Collaros in the playoffs, statistically, I think he has 4 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Through, I don't know how long the stretch is, but, he has a 1 to 2 touchdown interception ratio, which is, that's not great, in the playoffs. And again, that's something that I think a lot of people can just look past because you're so used to Collaros being there in the clutch. He's a veteran, he's poised. But, in this game, I mean, I'll say this much. I think the most pivotal moment in that game, besides Cody, in the crunch time, converting all those, the third down and the touchdown. I think the most pivotal moment in that game was when Collaros threw the interception to Cabianento in the back of the end zone. And that just completely shifted, I think, the dynamic because, I don't know. I wish I remember. But Winnipeg, they would have been up 2 scores again.
Yeah.
Had they gotten the ball to Dalton Schoen in that situation. So I think it was actually no, it was Lawler. I think that was being covered by KB and Ento. But anyway,
Yeah.
they get the ball. Yeah, right. So they get the ball into the end zone. And then that. I mean, if that happened, it felt like they would have put the game away. And there was there was multiple other times outside of that KB and Ento interception where I thought that the game was over. The biggest one that not a lot of people have been talking about because Montreal got the ball back in the second half, but when they got stood up at the goal line, after 3 tries and couldn't get in right before half. I mean, I thought, I'm like, are they going to bounce back from this? Like, this is kind of where Winnipeg would come in and just seal the deal and close it. But I think Winnipeg made just enough mistakes on their end to, in a sense, offset everything that Montreal did wrong early because, Montreal was playing really well in that first half. It's just, with the fumble, and I think the pick was in the first half from Fajardo. I could be wrong. But anyway, I know the fumble was the goal line stand. I mean, all those could have costed them the game. And I was prepared to come on here and be like, well, Montreal would have had it if they just, didn't do this and that. But now it's kind of like maybe if, Caleros doesn't throw in the direction of Kenny Lawler in that situation, maybe Winnipeg, is now in that true dynasty conversation where they win 3 out of the last 4. So again, very interesting just to see how quickly the dynamic changes going into that game. All the talk is on Winnipeg, about, what this makes their future look like. I mean, Montreal, I don't know if I met one person that weekend who picked Montreal. I wanted it to be a close game. I favored Winnipeg. But, I mean, initially I was sitting with a bunch of Bombers fans, and they were all just like, they weren't even breaking a sweat. They were just sitting there like, we're ready to, go out there and drop 30 on them and that'll be it, but that didn't happen. And, again, now we're sitting here and there's so many more questions about Winnipeg that, just weren't even brought up or weren't even thought about, over this weekend, through the festival and the game and everything like that. So, yeah, just interesting to follow, the fact that because Montreal wins, now Winnipeg, it's not that they're a bad team. I think we can all agree they could easily be back, depending on who they bring in, who they re-sign. I was looking over their free agent list this morning, but it's a lot different when you, you win 2 Grey Cups against the same team in Hamilton, and then you lose back-to-back Grey Cups in close games too, right? I mean, it combined 5 points over the past 2 years. So I don't know, man. It's probably a lot of frustration on the Bombers' end, but I mean, it'll definitely the mood I think has changed now going into the offseason.
Oh, I totally agree. And I do, like you said, I think Winnipeg kind of expected that and expected to walk in. And I saw a lot of comments from people like, still getting over this. And, am I angry? Am I disappointed? Jason, I've never, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl when I was working in the professional stand. It wasn't really, I mean, it was obviously exciting for Seattle. And then, the Mariners, we were in the playoffs last year and got, very quickly, removed, after kind of winning the fake playoff spots now that the MLB has kind of moved in the last couple of years. So I don't know what it's like a fan base, that's lived through a dynasty, right? We have friends that are New England Patriots fans. They're going through all that now. So I don't know what that feels like. To me, the dynasty is never exciting until after the fact, right? Like the Patriots now, it's exciting looking back. Well, there were many, many years, right, where people go, oh God, this is another whatever. So to me, this is the best storyline coming out, right? Because we talked same standings as last year, right? Same playoff, whatever. What did we make? Is this exciting? Is worth it? This to me, it totally makes it worth it. Where if Winnipeg comes out, it's not as exciting to the other 8 fan bases. What do you make of that as the overall storyline of the season? Now, looking back, is Montreal, hammering through, kind of fighting through everything versus Winnipeg, going back and trying to redeem their loss of last year.
Well, what I make of it is that it shows how difficult this league is to predict. When you look at the beginning of the season, almost everybody had Montreal either, 3rd place in the East or dead last in the East. And I think that was, warranted given that their moves during the offseason, they had the brand new head coach, brand new quarterback, a bunch of, turmoil throughout the offseason, but they really were able to overcome it. And I think it really generated one of the best stories that I've seen since I've started watching the CFL. This certainly was the best season since I've started covering the CFL on my channel since 2021. I think that we had so many great games, and I think that this was really the best game of the season in its biggest spot.
I would have to agree. And I don't know if it's just obviously doing the weekly recaps. I feel more invested. Last year, we did a lot of more previews going into the weekend ride. And then kind of by the time the next Thursday, Friday comes around, like, okay, yeah, what happened last weekend? Like doing the Monday recaps, I think keeping honest, right, in terms of like what's happening week to week. Evan, what do you make of that kind of the overall storyline? Because it is now looking back, if you were to write the CFL, what was the CFL 2023 season? It was the ragtag guys from Saskatchewan come in and put together this team, and it's not the Winnipeg Dynasty. I mean, they're almost the heels in this. That the underdog kind of upset the heel in the end.
Yeah, I mean, look, overall, the 2023 season, I agree with Jason. I feel like this was the best season that the CFL has had coming off their COVID year. I didn't start covering the CFL in full until 2021, and that 2021 season, I wouldn't say it was outright rough, but you could tell that this wasn't maybe the standard, right? I remember there being a lack of offense generally. A lot of the games, just fell over very quickly. That one wasn't entirely predictable either. I mean, you ended up with the same Grey Cup matchup and the same winner, so maybe you could argue that. But, I feel like the CFL last season, I didn't follow it as much. It was a busy time for me. So, I don't, there was the Nathan Rourke's of the world, and that obviously gave, a boost, I think, to what the CFL was doing. But this year finally felt complete. I mean, the amount of, close games and shootouts that we had, and, you finish the year with, a heavy underdog team winning. And this is, this might be the storyline that I want to focus on more. And I said this after the game on Sunday. While the Bombers lost the game, you could make the argument that the real losers of the CFL season were Saskatchewan.
Yes.
Given that, because we all know, right, Jason Moss, Cody Fajardo, the scapegoats, they went with Craig Dickinson instead, and now he's gone, after that one last season. And then, watching those guys win a Grey Cup. I mean, I saw there were plenty of Rider fans at the game. I love Riderville and all that, but I just, in a way, you kind of feel bad because it's like the fans obviously don't control that decision. They just have to sit there and watch their old, coordinator and coach go out and win, with a team. I don't know. I mean, I haven't had time to really do like a side-by-side comparison of Montreal and Saskatchewan roster-wise, but I don't know. I feel like Saskatchewan, still had more weapons and still had more of an opportunity, but once again had that same slide at the end of the season. And yeah, I mean, that's it's always great to just, I mean, again, it's very repetitive, and I'm sure everybody's here has heard it 1,000 times, but just being the underdog, like proving everybody wrong. That's what Montreal did. I mean, like you look at, I know, I think it was Sean Lemon who posted on Twitter, but like the TSM panel, all of them picked Winnipeg. And he was doing stuff like that, throughout the playoffs. And I think it was pretty cool. I think, when Darnell Sankey got there, he said that they weren't going to lose another game, and then they were going to go on and win the Grey Cup. And I think that was an accurate prediction. I don't know, because they won, 7 or 8 straight. So, and he got there in September. So, I mean, things like that. I mean, you just can't make that stuff up. I think, one of the cool things about Montreal's season in particular, too, aside from this Grey Cup win, the amount of playmakers that they had that just, I mean, the team itself, I don't think had, a ton of expectation in the media world. But I think, some of the playmakers that they had on both sides of the ball, again, Darnell Sankey, Sean Lemon, Reggie Stubblefield, KB Anento, Austin Mack, like all those guys, like there wasn't really, they were all like new, some of them were rookies, some of them weren't. Obviously Sean Lemon's a vet, but he came in late after being cut by BC. Like a lot of their guys just, it didn't feel like they really, I don't want to say started producing until maybe halfway through the season. But again, like these guys really did just come out of nowhere and start making plays. And I think that's really cool because in the CFL, again, you look at Winnipeg, it's the exact opposite. All their guys are veterans. Like the amount of guys that I could name on the Winnipeg team, even though I'm not like necessarily a Winnipeg fan, I mean, it's a long list. Like I was looking out there, when we were sitting there at the Grey Cup, and I recognized everybody, on the field for Winnipeg, just because a lot of their guys have been around in the league for so long. They have some, true all-time great players. But it's just one of those things. It doesn't really matter, I guess, about veteran presence when I don't know who said it, but someone we know said it. Like the hottest team always wins. When you get in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. All that stuff in the regular season, it doesn't matter. Even in that Grey Cup, like nothing that Cody Fajardo did necessarily in that game mattered until that final drive, those, 3 plays or whatever, where he, scrambled and then threw to Speaker, touchdown the Philpott. Because if he doesn't do those things, we're sitting here again, talking about Winnipeg being, the all-time great dynasty and, Montreal, just kind of caving in, and that would be the storyline that I think everybody or a majority of people expected, having talked to, again, a lot of people over the weekend in Hamilton. But, again, just it all comes back to that idea of, like the storyline changes so quickly depending on, just the results of the game, what happens. And again, like Jason said, it really does, like, if Montreal, scores with a minute left, I think Winnipeg, maybe they go down there and win the game. I think, just with the flow there at the end in the fourth quarter, all that back and forth, like, you could make the argument, even though Montreal played, really well in that game and they deserve to win, it really just, I think it does come down in some cases to who has the ball last, who has that, juice to get the job done in the final seconds, and make a play. But I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get too repetitive.
No, I mean, it comes down to if Cody doesn't make that throw, like you said, the narrative is up. Cody can't do it in the big time. When the game matters, he can't do it, right? And it's incredible, and it's so stupid because it's sports, right? And like it doesn't matter. But they were. I had just rewatched that Moneyball movie with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill here a couple weeks ago, and he talks about Brad Pitt. How can you not be romantic about baseball? When they're talking about kind of the pageantry and the storylines involved, like how can you not that literally throwing this stupid ball 45 yards down the field, whatever, in the course of 25 seconds. It changes. Cody's life has changed now, and you're part of the history, and the team's part of the history, and Moss and everyone else. To circle back on the Saskatchewan point, I want to get Jason's thoughts. I think it was Naylor had said during the season, the Cody going to Montreal, them cutting bait so fast, maybe you should give in the CFL, especially where quarterbacking is such a hot commodity. Maybe give people some more time than one down year. Here we benched Cody, and he didn't even make it through the season last year. I mean, that's what I was telling Dorothy. Like, not only did Saskatchewan not want it back, I mean, they benched him before the end of the season. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's an air of caution for teams like, say, Calgary with Jake Maier, because it takes time in this league to win. I feel like anytime you look at like the history of these quarterbacks and the ones that have won Grey Cups, they've had to go through their lumps in this league. Zach Claris is a prime example of it. Look at the time that he spent as a backup in Toronto, and then he goes to Hamilton. He actually gets to a Grey Cup in Hamilton and loses in dramatic fashion, and then goes through a bit of a down point in his career before he ultimately bounces back in the 4 straight Grey Cups here. So, I mean, you look at other guys in the league as well. Anthony Calvillo back in the day took a long time to be a competent quarterback in this league. He was with the Las Vegas Posse for his first year in the CFL, then went to Hamilton, was the starter here for 3 years, and then Hamilton cast him aside, and then he ultimately became one of the greatest CFL quarterbacks of all time with Montreal. So, an air of caution for these teams that move on from their quarterbacks too quickly. It's very difficult to develop quarterbacks in this league, and sometimes just giving them another year, I think, is the best decision.
Evan, what do you make of now, and obviously we'll have many more months to talk about this, but to kind of put the bow on the season here at the end of this, Montreal feels like a very sustainable product to go back again next year. This isn't, Hamilton brought in Bo Levi and maybe we got a year out of this and we're hosting. We really got, Cody's there and the defense is there. And it doesn't seem like they got a lot of young receivers. What do you make of that as my microphone seems to be breaking here?
Absolutely. I think the benefit of having, sort of young and to a degree unproven players in Montreal, those guys can last a long time. They can easily bring all that back and go do the same thing. I agree. I'm not going to say that it's more sustainable than like Winnipeg, because Winnipeg's gone to 4 straight, and that's that's obviously not very common, even if they only won 2. But totally. Montreal, again, that they have a lot of guys, and even their vets. Hell, Sean Lemon is 35, 36 years old. He has no signs of slowing down. So, bring him back, if he wants to be there. I know he's bounced around a lot, like Sankey, obviously. I think Sankey has a great future in the CFL, even if he took a detour in the XFL. I think, he enjoys the Canadian game, and he's come out and said that. I think I don't want to say these were his words, but I think he said, the CFL was ultimately, maybe a more sustainable product, and that's, I mean, you can argue that, right? I mean, there's going to be people on both sides of that spectrum, but ultimately, I mean, yeah, like just so it's great to see so many guys come in, and do those things. They'll be rewarded, whether it's in Montreal or with another team. Like there are a lot of playmakers. You don't win the Grey Cup without guys that can get the job done. So yeah, I agree. I think there is a bright future in Montreal. It's not just a one-off Cinderella run and then next season they win 5 games. No, like Cody, rest of the group, like they have proven so many people wrong. They're hungry. You can tell that whole team is hungry, and they do not want to, just leave this as their legacy. They want to continue that, as all teams should. All teams should have that drive, to compete and to be successful. And to be honest, if you don't have that drive, then I don't know what you're doing.
Right. Jason, do you concur with that, where it feels like this is very well put together now, moving this, even the midseason moves, smart moves, right? Smart acquisitions. This wasn't kind of a panic build. It seems like Danny really took his time coming in, and obviously kind of we well chronicled kind of all the offseason drama. What do you make of just kind of how the team's set right now?
Well, I'm interested to see how this affects Cody's confidence going into next year. If he's a guy that really puts together, a much better regular season than he did this year because of the confidence in how he played in this game this weekend. And I think that is something to watch going into next year. I'm always skeptical about defensive-led teams because it feels like it's harder to replicate defense year over year than offense is. And I think that it'll be interesting to see, what guys they lose on the defensive side. Obviously, a very talented defense there in Montreal. And shout out to them, by the way. John Hodge of 3 Down Nation tweeted out a stat. They held the opposing quarterbacks to 1 touchdown pass and 7 interceptions in 3 playoff games. That is pretty remarkable, and they deserve a lot of credit for this victory.
Yeah, I was bummed. Evan and I saw, it's hard to miss John Hodge, but Evan and I saw John Hodge at and we'll talk our fun stories at the end, but saw him at the BC Lions party with JC. JC, who does not like me, was at the after party after the Grey Cup, but we got to see, I got to see the one I didn't get to see, because I think Hodge actually would have talked to me. I mean, JC, I kind of talked around JC and at JC, but not really to JC, but, Evan, any other thoughts on that? And I'll figure out another question here.
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, we'll get into some stories, because there's a lot of good stories from that weekend, obviously. But that's what Grey Cup is, man. It's a fun time.
In terms, I guess I'll give you this, Evan. Do you share the same concern of defensive-led teams here going into next season?
Yeah, I would say that's a fair argument. Again, it really depends on who they're able to bring back and who might test the free agent market. That's the one very interesting thing about the CFL. I don't know if I've brought it up on the show at all this year, but I'll talk about it now. The turnover in the CFL, just because so many guys are on 1-year deals, it's really interesting. I mean, you could win the Grey Cup, and it's not like you just have everybody locked in for another run. You got to put in the work in the offseason, and I have trust in Danny Machocha. I think he will, regardless of what guys let go, what guys he brings in, that he will build another good team. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, you have a lot of turnover. There's a lot of uncertainty. But the also good thing about the CFL, I think, is like guys can go back, pretty easily. Like if they go somewhere and they don't like it, I mean, look, like, Kenny Lawler was in that boat, right? Obviously, he wasn't a champion on Sunday, but he was a very consistent playmaker for Winnipeg once he got his work visa situation figured out, and he played in Edmonton last year and, didn't enjoy it, and then came back to Winnipeg where he had played for 4 seasons before that. And that was ultimately, I think, a successful move. So, things like that. I mean, there's always, I think, a door open for, guys that were, in Montreal in the past. There's probably guys, looking at that team, like I'd love to play there, with that culture and what they were able to build and the whole, proving everybody wrong mentality. There might be guys that were in Montreal before that say, hey, you know what? I want to go back here, new coaching staff, new ownership, and just give this another try. So we'll see, right? I can't guarantee any of that, of course, but it'll be something to follow.
One more question about the game, and then I want to talk a little offseason before we get to stories. Jason, I saw a lot of, and like Marshall had the breakdown of the Big Hill stuff, and then Big Hill kind of whatever, but I did see comments like maybe Adam Big Hill should not have been in this game, right? There had been, was he going to be a game time decision, all of that stuff. And in terms of them using, I think it was a Rosh on Rod's show talking about, that was maybe a wasted roster spot at that point, just given his physical abilities. Questions about that with Winnipeg's defense? Should they have made? Is it second guessing now for any of that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to question that. I think that the CFL, you have a very small roster, relatively speaking. I think you only get to dress 46 guys on the game day roster, so every spot counts, especially at the middle linebacker position. That is a very important position. And Big Hill, I mean, you can't replicate what he can bring, and I understand if he's able to go in any capacity, that temptation to put him out there. But I don't think he was 100% out there. He got nicked up early in the game, and I don't think he looked like himself out there. I think Dalton Schoen looked pretty good. He was the other guy that was kind of a game time decision for them. So I don't have that many questions about that. But I think that at the end of the day, Big Hill playing was a bit questionable.
Going in here, Evan, to the offseason, Winnipeg, are they going to shore up anything? Montreal kind of, status quo, whatever. Like, what storylines here, early storylines are you looking at in the offseason in terms of talent stuff?
Yeah, well, I think for Winnipeg, before we even focus on players and that free agent list that I was talking about before, they're 3 personnel guys. So they've got your general manager, Kyle Walters. You've got the assistant GMs. I think it's Ted Govea and the all-time great Danny McManus. None of those guys are under contract, I believe, in 2024. So I think step one, is making sure that you have a GM in place. I would imagine Walters will be back. I don't know about their assistants. Like, I'm not, when it comes to like the football ops cap, see, that's not really that's not really my expertise. But it'll be interesting to see if they're able to bring all 3 of those guys back, because they all have a very, I'd say, significant role in building the roster. I know McManus, I think, does a lot of the U.S. scouting. So I think that's a priority, because if you don't even have the right guy or a guy at all to help construct the team, to go to a 5th straight Grey Cup, that's not going to be a very attractive place, for free agents with, uncertainty and things like that. Now, I think they'll get it figured out. This isn't, anything against Winnipeg. But it goes back to, I mean, there's a lot of guys like, I was talking to Jason after the game, like Stanley Bryant, who's 37. Like, you have to wonder if that was his last game. Big Hill, I imagine he'd be back. He's 35. I don't see, like, Big Hill can't go out like that, man. I mean, Big Hill's, an all-time great, defender, linebacker. I don't know if that was his last game, that would be very disappointing. And obviously that situation, I'm not going to get into that. I think it's just kind of unnecessary controversy. I mean, I think they played him, because, they want to have the best chance to win. Now, I don't know if it was the best idea, because I think maybe, I feel like he was less ready to go than Schoen was. But again, that's, I'm not gonna get too much into that. Going back to the point about Winnipeg and what their future looks like, in 2024, I think it's really important, more than anything, as much as you have a veteran presence. I'd really like to see them, bring in some younger guys, because Montreal had a lot of rookies that impressed, but Winnipeg doesn't really have that. All their guys, feels like every playmaker that they have on their roster is like, 30 years old and above. So I feel like establishing, some sort of, not like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but just getting some, fresh new faces in there, some younger guys where maybe like those become, the new leaders of the team, because you're not going to have Jackson Jeffcoat forever. You're not going to have Willie Jefferson forever. You're not going to have, Stanley Bryant, Jamarcus Hardrick, etc. Right? There's so many old guys on that team. So I think bringing in some, younger, new faces, not necessarily, change the culture by any means, but just, just to have some guys where you could really, bank on them long term, as opposed to just kind of going year by year and, vet minimum stuff, all that. I think I would like to see that from Winnipeg more than anything.
Hey, Jason, for you in terms of the offseason stuff, and I think Montreal has to look tremendously more appealing now than it did, a year ago here. And I think that team building, I think, will be even obviously having the Grey Cup. But I mean, there were so many questions kind of going into the offseason for that. What do you make kind of the offseason moves?
Well, I think that the thing I'm watching for is primarily quarterbacks and which teams decide to stick with their guy. I mean, look at Saskatchewan. Does the new coach in Saskatchewan decide to stick with Trevor Harris or go in a different direction? What happens in Hamilton with all the list of quarterbacks that they have here and all the possibilities? What happens with McLeod Bethel Thompson if he comes back to the CFL? What happens in Ottawa? So I'm looking for all of those storylines, and like Evan said, I'm really excited to see what happens with Winnipeg and all of those different things that are up in the air with that front office and some of the players there that are kind of reaching that retirement kind of age.
Well, and I mean, if you had, I can't imagine anyone on this didn't listen to the pregame show, but if you hadn't, I mean, it really sounds like McLeod is, at least Farhan was saying, it sounds pretty confident here going up to the CFL and potentially Hamilton. So I want to get quick thoughts, Jason, because I'm sure Evan will just be like, do you have any thoughts on the halftime show, the Green Day halftime show?
Oh, it was fantastic. Green Day is one of my favorite bands ever, and I was a little bit thrown off by the first song that they threw out there, but like we were talking after the game, they probably negotiated that when they decided to play this show, and I think that they did a really good job. I think that I had no complaints about it, really.
Evan, did you enjoy the Boulevard of Broken Dreams?
I did. Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Holiday. Yeah, I mean, I know those songs. I'm not completely out of touch. I know I'm younger, but I enjoyed it. I really did think, aside from, I mean, you could say whatever you want about the song choice, music, the order. I thought the presentation was really cool. They were shooting flames and fireworks and the whole bit, and they did. I feel like they did a lot. With whatever it was, 14 minutes or whatever they had. I mean, it's a very condensed program. They only played 4 songs. But yeah, I mean, ultimately I thought, that was, people were saying that was one of the best halftime shows that they've ever seen. Again, people who are seasoned Grey Cup veterans, I guess you would say.
To me, it excites because I'm really curious to see what Amar Doman does next year. Obviously, we had Matt Baker on the show, and if I didn't say it on here, I did in the tweet. Thanks again to the BC Lions and everyone for kind of hosting us. And it sounds like they said, "Hey, just do it again next year. Do the show at the BC Lions Den, which anything they can take stress off. My plate is nice, but." Excited to see what Amar does because it did feel like the Ticats and the Hamilton organization, they said, we got to do something big here. I thought in retrospect, Saskatchewan totally dropped the ball last year with this half of 4 to Georgia line and this mishmash of country stuff. This was something marketable. You could kind of build around. I like the marketing of it, even though I know there was some controversy with some of the Green Day merch not being available for sale and it was only like staff stuff. But they're retweeting the videos. I got emails from it because I think I'm signed up for the Green Day. Like when they're coming here, like I'm signed up on their mailing list. So I was getting emails like, hey, check out our halftime performance, links to the video and all of that. So I thought that it was a good legacy band that is still relevant, if that makes sense. I think Green Day, I didn't realize that, but Green Day is still kind of relevant. And like Jason, no, it's like the people in Hamilton, but I think like that's just an exciting show. Like we don't get Green Day every day coming in kind of whatever retrospect. Am I wrong about that?
Well, they have played here in Hamilton before, but I didn't get the chance to go see them. Unfortunately, I was in university a few years ago when they came to Hamilton, so I'm glad I had a chance to make up for it and see them this time around. And yeah, to echo your sentiment, I'm really excited to see what happens in BC next year. Obviously, they've done a whole lot with the kickoff concerts for their home openers and all the tailgate parties. So I'm really excited to see what they put together for that Grey Cup next year.
The other thing I forgot to mention was we kind of hung out in the club level just because Dorothy, it gets cold and we're kind of just watching through the glass a lot of the game. We went out and watched the Green Day concert. But I will say tons and tons of Ticat fans there, where I know there was a lot last year where, Saskatchewan, there was a lot of empty seats last year. We were in Saskatchewan. Like, I don't know what that looked like on the TV broadcast as well, but a lot of empty seats. I had pictures from the flyover and all of that. Packed this year. I mean, as far as I could see, it seemed like it was a tremendously, either a sellout or very, very close to the sellout. But I thought that was a credit to the Ticat fans for still coming out and enjoying that. I don't know if the Green Day helped with that or if Ticats just weren't as bitter, but it seemed like there was a lot of controversy last year with Saskatchewan not wanting the Winnipeg people to kind of get their seats or whatever. But this year it felt like they more have embraced that, if that makes sense. Jason, did you notice just a lot of Ticat fans?
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that this was really our first true Grey Cup since 1996. I mean, yes, we hosted in 2021, but we weren't able to do, the full out party and really do everything the city wanted to. So I think that was a huge reason why that it was such a success from that perspective. And I think that we'll never know because Toronto didn't make it, but I always had that in the back of my head. If Toronto was in the game, would we have seen a similar thing where Hamilton fans didn't want to sell their tickets to Toronto fans? But like I said, we'll never know.
I like that. Evan, anything else on the game, the halftime? We'll talk some stories here before we get out.
I mean, I agree with Jason on, the Argonauts. Like if they were playing in Hamilton, I think you would have had a similar situation. Although I don't know. I mean, the weather was so nice there in Hamilton. I mean, compared to Regina, it's two different parts of the country. So even if the Argos did play, I feel like there'd be less fans. But I still feel like it'd be more because like I watched the broadcast last year of the Grey Cup. When it was in Regina, Winnipeg, Toronto, and those empty seats showed. You could really see them. It did not feel like that. I felt like it was very packed. There was almost 30,000, in the stadium, when we were there in Hamilton, right? So, I feel like it was definitely a better atmosphere. And I mean, obviously being there in person, like, yeah, it's going to be a better atmosphere than it was last year when I'm watching it at home on my TV. But, like you can tell, I mean, you can hear the crowd noise and everything. Like I felt like the Hamilton fans were really getting into it. And, I feel like a lot of them were happy that Montreal won, representing the East. And it's always anybody but Toronto, right?
Yeah. No, I like that. So let's talk a few stories here, kind of festival-y stuff before we get out. Felt, last year, like the first year we did it, it was kind of a like hazard. We didn't know what we were doing and the media stuff and what's going on. Obviously, Regina last year getting it fine-tuned, but I thought it was great. Unfortunately, we didn't all get like the credentialed equally. That I don't really understand that. I heard that the RDS, there was a lot of French-speaking media there that was kind of taking out a lot of that space is what I heard. Is what Montreal kind of got into it, that there was a lot of that was taken away. We kind of avoided the press room, and we, like I said, kind of hung out at the club and all of that. But I did appreciate that we got this little Grey Cup tumbler in the media swag bag, so I thought that was cool. And I got to get this hat. I was going to wear it on the podcast, but I might have sweat through my pants here. But we got this really cool Grey Cup. I don't know when I'm going to wear this. I thought maybe this was a wear it out hat, but it's a little more over that. Fun. Dorothy had fun as always, kind of seeing a lot of friends and stuff that way. Evan, what stood out to you in terms of the things? I know that we went to the BC Lions Den Saturday night. That was rocking. I mean, we were there till 3 a.m, 2:30 in the morning. I don't know when that was. So what was kind of your favorite takeaway?
Oh yeah, I mean, I thought the Lions Den was probably the best, part experience-wise. I mean, other than the game, but being there, at the team party headquarters, and Matt dancing around, and we got the little VIP tickets or whatever. I thought that was all great, and I mean, I had a great time. Like I met, James Butler, a couple other players, obviously, guys that I've known for a minute. So really good to finally, meet up with them, even if it was like at 1 a.m. in a dark room with music and everybody's drinking. But no, I really enjoyed it. I thought, that was not what I was expecting in terms of, team party headquarters sounds fun, but, it really was a party. Like it was cool to just see so many, I guess, like-minded individuals. And by that, I mean CFL fans, representing their teams, in different places. Like BC was obviously great. Winnipeg's always great. They have an amazing fan base. Shout out to Bombers. Like I know they lost, but man, their fans are incredible. Same with Saskatchewan. Any of those teams like in the prairies, like those are all, real football communities. I feel like I was really impressed by Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, what they had to show. And then, I don't think I got around to Hamilton or Calgary or a couple of the other rooms, but BC, I mean, took the cake. They treated us well. And obviously we got our scarves, for the festival next year. I don't have that with me right now, but you and me, Reid, both got those. Very nice gift. Thank you to the people on the lines for that. Seriously, I will definitely be wearing that next year when I'm in Vancouver. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of memories in a short amount of time. So I'm grateful for it.
As I describe my whole set here. Yeah, I tried to kind of, I think when I'm full screen, I think you'll be able to see it, but I tried to kind of put it up on this little thing so that you can see it here on the show. But yeah, super ran into the BC Lions people leaving the Grey Cup there on Sunday. I never really got, and I don't know if it's a CFL thing, I never really got the team, like Evan said, kind of the team party headquarters. Like, to me, you're in Regina, you're in Hamilton, you've got all these different bars and restaurants you can go to, but it's like, we're partying crazy at the convention center. I don't know, Jason, what did you make of that? Just in terms of like, is that a CFL thing? Like, we met at Merritt Brewing on Friday, but it felt like that really was where the party was, those team headquarters.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Evan said, I think it's all about like-minded individuals, meeting people that, share the same passion that you do. And I think that, yeah, it was really cool to see, what like all the different party rooms had going on. I liked checking out the Atlantic Schooners one with my girlfriend, Alex. So I think that, it was really interesting to see. I'd never seen anything like that before. Last year or 2 years ago in Hamilton, we didn't really have anything like that going on. So it was really cool to see. And James Street also was closed off. I know you guys didn't get a chance to go down there very much when things were going on there, but it's closed off there. They had the Armory with a bunch of, flag football and, kicking contests going on. So it was a lot of fun the whole weekend. And I think the highlight for me was just meeting you guys and getting to hang with you guys. And, after doing this for 21 weeks or whatever it was really cool to just hang out with you guys after the game and really celebrate what a great season it was.
Yeah, it was cool. Hamilton works out, Regina, the stadium is there, but it's a little bit removed. Like, being able to kind of walk in and out and do all that stuff. I know, like I said, 2 years ago, we stayed way out in the Airbnb, and it was easier this year doing it in the city. Always amazed kind of, and maybe it's just for me coming from Seattle. I enjoy kind of the small town aspect of the CFL. I don't know if it would flow the same in Toronto. I'm curious next year in BC where you're kind of all at that downtown core to kind of take over, because the idea was you're walking around Hamilton and anywhere you look, you got Grey Cup signage and yellow and black and yellow for the Tie Cats and the Grey Cup Festival stuff. So I enjoyed all of that stuff. But if you're in Toronto, I've heard like that would just get kind of lost in the city stuff going on. So cool, awesome that way. Evan, any other thoughts, stories on that kind of stuff?
Not too much. I mean, I think it was also just cool seeing Tim Hortons field. I was very impressed. I mean, it's only 10 years old now or something like that. So yeah, I was very impressed to get to see Tim Hortons field in person. Felt like it was a very good venue for the CFL in terms of capacity. What they want to do. Yeah, I really enjoyed the stadium aspect as well, and it was nice to see it. Again, full up, because like I've been to a couple BC games, they close off the upper bowl and it's fine. It's not a complaint, right? I mean, they, got to do what they got to do for game day atmosphere, but really nice to just see, multiple sections of CFL fans. And again, not a lot of empty seats, right? People turned up, they showed out, people flew in. I mean, you could tell that, there was a lot of people who were really, I guess, committed to this.
Yeah, we did the Randy State of the fan address as well. I thought that was really interesting. That was on Friday morning after we flew in late. I think we got to our room about 11 on Thursday night. They had obviously done the media one earlier in the week, but I will tell you, and I know that Randy gets a lot of kind of flack and this is his kind of figurehead role, right? And it's more of a figurehead than it is like I'm really making these constant changes. It's a different dynamic than you would view like Roger Goodell. But to me, they had the fans come up. They were asking questions, and Randy had this whole thing like, well, before you ask a question, I'm going to ask you a question. Like, what's your favorite, whatever. And I really just thought like Randy worked the room for about an hour, and I really just thought it was like tremendous on that. And like, I know he's busy. I know they have to do that, but he doesn't need to. Like, to me, that was him. Like, I'm going to put forth a little extra effort here, right? Like, let me engage with some of the fans. I also thought that eats up some of the time that people don't get to ask me questions, right? Like, if I'm asking you stuff, then I don't have to kind of like tap that answer. But I really did. Dorothy and I were there, and I thought, man, this is like, I'd buy a ticket to this and get some popcorn. Like, I thought Randy did a good job with that. I just think he's very gregarious in that way when you kind of get him outside of like the commissioner role. I thought he's been good on the show, but we're doing the media one, and then the later, it felt to me like they had some big news coming down this week, and nothing really came. It really just seemed like they wanted to kind of do, I don't know, they wanted to top load the week, and then it felt like Friday, Saturday, there wasn't as much media stuff to do, and then you could get ready for the game. But Jason, any of the other activities? I know you said you saw some of the concerts and stuff. Any of the other stuff that stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I got to see a local Hamilton guy, Steve Strongman, that I wanted to see for a long time on Thursday during the day there on James Street. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, just to echo Evan's sentiments about Tim Hortons Field, I think that it's really the ideal stadium for a CFL team. Yeah, it doesn't ever look too empty. Even during a regular season game, it doesn't look that empty. So I think that it's really the perfect venue for a CFL team. And yeah, I really enjoy having the Ticats play there.
Well, and it was cool. And I don't know who all they got. Like, I know Baker was on the field and Nick Kowalski with the Lions, but like they had the crowd on the field for this kind of the halftime show, like they do the Super Bowl. Like, oh, they got all the people that kind of run out around Rihanna. But I thought that was cool. And then, yeah, obviously packed with that. And like Evan said, with the fire and all of that. I don't know. I mean, if you're the CFL, I think ratings came out. I know Dunk was posting it. It looked like the TV viewership was up, certainly over the last couple of years, rebounding. And like, you always got to look at that. Like, it was down. So, you know, it's good to be up. That doesn't mean it's kind of over where it was before. But obviously our viewership up. I talked about that off the top of the show in terms of kind of, I think people looking for non-traditional media that's covering the league. I know that there was a lot of, reporters and radio station there, but I like having us be involved in that mix as well. Cause I think if you look at the numbers we did, even compared to a lot of the content that the CFL did, which spoiler, we beat everything except like the game recap, which, makes sense. Like here's the recap of the CFL game. But I don't know. I think this had to feel, if you're Ambrosi, if you're the board of governors, if you're everyone, this has to feel like a successful season. Evan, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, not only were we successful, with our endeavors over the weekend, but yeah, I feel like it was a win for the league as a whole, having that, again, like I talked about at the top of the show, this was Hamilton's Grey Cup. It wasn't, some thing constructed by the CFL, to follow COVID protocols. This was, like for the city of Hamilton. And again, I really enjoyed not just like the Grey Cup itself, the festival, the game, but like, yeah, I mean, Hamilton as a whole, I think really is a football city. And I've been waiting to see that for a long time. I have some old ties to the Ticats. And, I was always told that, Hamilton, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's rare, but there's only, maybe like Hamilton and like Regina, I suppose, are really the only two, maybe true football markets in the CFL where like that is, the top sport. Maybe Winnipeg. I don't know how the Jets do. But, I think like in Hamilton, like there is a focus on, Canadian football. And that's really cool to see where, because that's sometimes I think might be an afterthought, right? I mean, I know I have plenty of family in Canada, people that I know up there. And, when I bring up the CFL, it's not really something that they're in touch with. Yeah, they know about the Lions and you read about it in the news occasionally, but it's not something that I think it gets overlooked a lot, right? Because it's a niche sport. Football is not really the top event in Canada, you might say. There's hockey and other things that overtake it. But I think, the Canadian game all around is great outside of, Hamilton and all these markets that we're talking about. Just the sport, the way it's played, some of the careers that have been crafted out there. I mean, you really felt that, I feel like, when you're at, Grey Cup weekend and just surrounded by a lot of, former and current players, and, all-time greats and, some other guys who are, making their way up the ranks of the league all around. Again, just very inclusive and I don't know, very, very good. That's my final words, I guess.
Yeah, I just thought treated well, like I said, in terms of us being kind of brought into the media wing here a couple years ago, just in terms of the interactions and like everyone that came on the show. And we saw, Evan and I saw Naylor after, because they were staying downtown, they weren't at the media. And Evan and I saw Naylor take a road dog from the BC Lions Den party. But Naylor had said, because they were coming in between their hits to do our show across the street, and he said, it was really tight. He's like, getting back, like, and you did fine timing and everything, but he's like, it was just, that was a big ask for us to be able to get over there. And so, everyone kind of working towards all that. We certainly appreciate that. And then, it always just kind of blows me away. Like Evan said, CFL, if you're in America, this niche kind of whatever, this is the biggest thing of the year. everybody takes it, with such gravitas, and, Arash is bringing out his best suit, and you got Dunk running around and all this stuff. Like, it's just cool to be a part of that experience, because I've tried to say this, and like, just because in America, like getting, when you say like, oh, we got credential for the CFL, or whatever, like that might not mean anything here. Like that is a very big deal, at least to the CFL people. And that it means a lot to us, and being able to be involved in all of that. But, stuff in the off season here, let's get the CFL Plus working, and let's get some more, relationships formed with some content creators. Jason, any other thoughts from you before we get out of here?
No, I just wanted to take the time to say thank you guys for this great season of covering the league together. It sure is a lot more fun covering the league with somebody else than just doing videos by myself. So I really do appreciate the time you guys put in every week. And we had a great time in Hamilton.
Yeah, so this will be, like I said, this kind of round out this today. We'll see what's going on. I think listener / producer Max and I might try to do a little Friday morning chat about all the XFL stuff, now that it's been really nice to be focused on this like football here for the last couple weeks. I mean that because and I know Mark's trying to do stuff, and there's all the different, what's going on with all the merger stuff. Been really nice talking actual football, going to the games and playoffs and all of that. But I think we'll do a stop down with that. And then we'll see. I was going to do CFL interviews this week, but then with the parade and with American Thanksgiving on Thursday, not quite sure, but maybe we'll do some stuff here, after the holidays, and kind of get the CFL players figured out. But I appreciate all the subscribers, joining and all the support we got from all of that. But yeah, look for some XFL stuff here. And then we will have the CFL Media Day stuff here coming up. I think it's in February, but we'll get all that. We had a ton of great interviews last year, or maybe end of January. Evan, anything else from you?
No, I don't think so. I think we're
awesome.
Good.
Evan, well, everyone, like I said, enjoy American Thanksgiving. If you're not doing that, let's pray to God the Commanders get absolutely killed by the Cowboys. Let's fire Ron Rivera on Black Friday. That would be my Christmas gift. But I appreciate it. Appreciate Jason getting on here every week. I appreciate Evan getting on here, and even with travel and everything else, it means a lot. Like I said, it makes it way easier, as Jason said, when you got a couple of people bouncing around stuff. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.